The revolver's barrel pressed into Martha Caldwell's temple, cold and unyielding as the eyes of the man holding it. Dust swirled through the Nevada alley, catching the day's dying light like blood suspended in water. "Where's your boy hiding that deed, old woman?" "Victor Reese," growled Sebastian Reeves's most feared enforcer, his scarred face twisted with cruel anticipation. "Boss wants that land. Today." Martha's crippled legs trembled beneath her threadbare dress, but her clouded eyes remained defiant. "I don't—" The gunhammer clicked back. "Wrong answer." A shadow fell across the alley entrance. "Touch her again, and they'll find pieces of you across 3 counties. Amos Caldwell emerged from the haze, his own revolver leveled at Reese's head. Victor chuckled, the sound like stones grinding. "Look who's protective now." He kept his gun pressed to Martha's temple. "Funny, considering I've watched you use her face as a punching bag all week." "Now that's family business," Amos snarled. "And you're not family." For a heartbeat, Martha saw something flicker in her son's eyes, a ghost of the boy she'd raised before whiskey and greed hollowed him out. Then it vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "The deed stays with me," Amos continued. "Tell Reeves he'll get his precious land when I get my 5,000, not before." Victor's smile tightened. "Mr. Reeves doesn't appreciate renegotiation." His finger tensed on the trigger. "Maybe watching Mama die will improve your memory." "Wait," Martha gasped. The explosion came not from Victor's revolver, but from the opposite end of the alley. Victor's shoulder erupted in a spray of crimson as a rifle shot echoed between the buildings. He staggered backward, his gun discharging harmlessly into the dirt. A tall figure materialized from the shadows, high cheekbones, silver-streaked hair, and eyes that held both compassion and deadly precision. He moved with fluid grace, rifle trained unflinchingly on the wounded enforcer. "Next one goes between your eyes." Willow Song warned voice, calm as still water. "Leave. Now." Victor clutched his bleeding shoulder, hatred blazing in his eyes. "This ain't over." He spat, backing toward the street. "Nobody crosses Sebastian Reeves." He disappeared into the gathering dusk, blood trailing behind him like macabre breadcrumbs. The moment the enforcer vanished, Amos rounded on Martha, fury replacing the momentary alliance. His fist connected with her jaw, snapping her head back. "Where were you hiding it?" he demanded, grabbing her hair as she crumpled against the wall. "The money in your cup, 13 cents. 13 goddamn cents you're holding out on me." "That's enough." Willow Song's rifle swung toward Amos, who froze mid-strike. "Stay out of this, Indian," Amos warned. "This is family business. Willow Song's expression remained impassive, but his voice carried a dangerous edge. "Is that what you call this?" Martha's vision blurred as blood trickled from her split lip. Through the haze, she saw Jonas Fellman appear at the alley entrance, shotgun in hand. "Now step away from her, Caldwell," the storekeeper ordered. "Or I'll ventilate that fancy vest of yours." Caught between 2 armed men, Amos's survival instincts kicked in. His face underwent a remarkable transformation, rage dissolving into wounded dignity. "My poor mother's having another episode," he said, voice suddenly solicitous. "I was just trying to help her home." "Strange kind of help that splits a woman's lip," Fellman growled. Amos assessed his options with the cold pragmatism of the perpetually cornered. "I'll return for her when she's calmer," he announced, straightening his vest. "When you see what she's truly become, you'll understand my burden." As Amos stalked away, Martha's body betrayed her. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, the accumulated pain of years rising like floodwater. The last thing she felt was being lifted in strong arms, carried away from the latest battlefield of her broken life. She dreamed of water-sacred springs, water Thomas had called it. In her dream, It flowed uphill, defying nature, carrying whispered voices from a time before white men claimed the land. The waters parted to reveal Thomas, standing on the opposite bank, proud in his deputy's badge, pointing urgently at something in the current. Between them, a wooden box, ornately carved, floating away. She reached for it, but her fingers passed through it like smoke. The box opened, spilling not papers, but blood into the sacred waters, staining them crimson as they began to boil. Through the steam walked Sebastian Reeves, holding the skin of a wolf over his arm, smiling as Amos knelt before him, drinking the poisoned water from cupped hands. "He's coming for the water." Martha gasped, jolting awake. Pain lanced through her body as reality reasserted itself, a small hide tent dappled with morning light, the scent of sage and cedar hanging in the air. "She wakes," came a melodic female voice. An elderly Pawnee woman with eyes like polished obsidian leaned over her, pressing a cool cloth to Martha's forehead. "The vision fever breaks." "Vision fever," Martha croaked, her throat parched and raw. "The waters called to you." The woman explained, as if this clarified everything. "I am Singing Reed. You are under the protection of the people of the sacred springs now." A familiar face appeared at the tent entrance, Willow Song, carrying a clay cup of steaming liquid. "3 days you have walked the Shadowlands," he said, kneeling beside her. "The waters have shown you truth, yes." Memory flooded back Victor Reese's gun. Amos's betrayal, the rifle shot that had saved her life. "Reeves," she whispered. "He's coming for the springs." "Yes." Willow Song helped her sit, supporting her weight as he offered the cup. "Drink, medicine for body and spirit." The liquid tasted of earth and sky, bitter, yet somehow cleansing. As it spread warmth through her battered body, Martha studied her surroundings more carefully. Beyond the tent entrance, she glimpsed a hidden valley, encircled by towering red stone walls. A stream chattered nearby, its voice unnaturally clear, as if each drop carried a distinct whisper. "Where am I?" she asked, though something in her already knew the answer. "The place of echoes," Willow Song replied. "Few outsiders have seen it. The waters themselves hide it from those who would destroy them." Martha frowned. "Waters can't hide valleys?" Singing Reed made a sound halfway between amusement and rebuke. "Your husband understood better. Thomas Caldwell heard the waters speak. That is why he protected them." The mention of Thomas sent a pang through Martha's heart. "You knew my husband?" Willow Song nodded. "My father Gray Eagle saved him and 3 others during the blizzard of '48. When others would have left white men to freeze, my father saw only fellow humans in need." His eyes held Martha's, searching for understanding. "Your husband never forgot that debt. When he acquired this land, he wrote protection for the sacred springs into the deed, protection that your son now seeks to destroy. For Reeves's money," Martha confirmed bitterly. $5,000. "The price of his soul," Singing Reed murmured. Martha attempted to rise, wincing as pain shot through her crippled legs. "I must stop him. The deed, first you must heal," Willow Song said firmly, easing her back onto the sleeping mat. "The waters have chosen you as their voice. You cannot speak for them if you cannot stand." "Chosen me?" Martha's laugh held no humor. "I'm a broken old woman who couldn't even protect herself, let alone sacred waters." Singing Reed's gnarled fingers gripped Martha's with surprising strength. "The most powerful medicines come from plants that have been crushed," she said. "Your breaking is your strength, Martha Caldwell. You have survived what would have killed others. The waters see this." For the first time in years, Martha felt something unfamiliar stir within her chest, not hope exactly, but perhaps its precursor possibility. In Salvation Creek's only hotel, a grandiose name for what was essentially a two-story wooden structure with pretensions. Sebastian Reeves paced like a caged mountain lion. His silver hair caught the lamplight as he moved, casting shifting shadows across the room's sparse furnishings. 3 days, he snarled at Sheriff Blackwood, who slumped uncomfortably in a chair too small for his bulk. 3 days, and you found neither the old woman nor that savage who took her. We've searched everywhere we legally can, Blackwood protested, mopping sweat from his florid face. The Indian agent would be all over us if we pushed onto their reservation without cause. Cause? Reeves stopped pacing, his aristocratic features hardening into something predatory. I've given you 30,000 reasons to find them, Sheriff. Or perhaps that sum no longer interests you. Before Blackwood could respond, the door burst open. Amos Caldwell stumbled in, disheveled and reeking of whiskey. Reese is back, he announced without preamble. Shot up bad. Reeves's eyes narrowed. Where? Dr. Williams is patching him at the back of the barber shop, Amos replied. Said the Indian ambushed him. Had my mother with him. And the deed? Reeves demanded. Amos shook his head. Reese didn't get it. But we know they're hiding somewhere near Pawnee territory. And not good enough. Reeves's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. The Founders' Day celebration is in 3 days. I need that land secured before then, before my investors arrive from San Francisco. Maybe we don't need the deed. Amos suggested, a calculating gleam in his bloodshot eyes. I'm her son, her only kin. If Mother were declared mentally incompetent, a competency hearing takes weeks. Blackwood interrupted. Even with my influence. A cold smile spread across Reeves's face. Unless the subject in question poses an imminent danger. He turned to Amos. How devoted an actor are you, Mr. Caldwell? Amos matched his smile, revealing the rot beneath his once handsome features. For $5,000, I could make Shakespeare weep. Reeves nodded approvingly. Sheriff, prepare commitment papers for Martha Caldwell. Dangerous delusions, violent tendencies, the usual. Meanwhile, Mr. Caldwell here will create a performance worthy of the stage. He placed a paternal hand on Amos's shoulder. A son heartbroken by his mother's descent into madness, forced to have her committed for her own safety. And the Indian? Blackwood asked. Once we have Martha Caldwell legally declared insane, her testimony means nothing. Reeves explained with cold logic. As for Willow Song, accidents happen to savages all the time in this territory, especially ones who interfere with progress. None of them noticed the small mouse hole in the corner of the room, nor the eye that watched through it belonging to a young Pawnee boy who understood enough English to recognize the danger forming around his people's sacred waters. By her 5th day in the Hidden Valley, Martha had regained enough strength to venture beyond Willow Song's tent. Supported by a walking stick carved from lightning-struck cedar, she made slow circuits alongside the whispering stream. Other members of the small Pawnee community nodded respectfully as she passed, not out of pity, she realized, but recognition. Here, her broken body wasn't viewed as weakness, but as evidence of survival. It was during one such walk that she encountered Sarah Little Creek for the first time. The younger woman appeared on the path ahead, a basket of freshly gathered herbs balanced on her hip. Unlike most of the Pawnee who wore traditional garments, Sarah's practical calico dress marked her as someone who moved between worlds, though beaded moccasins peeked from beneath its hem. So, you're the water speaker, she said without preamble, her direct gaze assessing. Uncle said you'd survived things that would have killed most. Guess he wasn't exaggerating. Martha couldn't help smiling at the blunt greeting. Your uncle has a generous view of my resilience. Willow Song doesn't do generous, Sarah replied, falling into step beside Martha. He does true. She glanced sideways at the older woman. The waters really showed you visions. Dreams, Martha corrected. Fever dreams, nothing more. Sarah made a sound that managed to convey profound skepticism in a single note. The springs don't waste their medicine on nothing more. If they call to you, there's purpose in it. She stopped at a flat rock overlooking a deeper pool in the stream. Sit. We need to talk, and those legs of yours are shaking like aspen leaves. Martha gratefully sank onto the stone, stretching her aching limbs. You have news from town. Sarah nodded, her expression grave. My position as laundress lets me hear things not meant for Indian ears. Your son has been busy telling everyone you've gone mad with grief, that your mind's been slipping for years. Says Willow's song has bewitched you with pagan rituals, and they believe him. Martha asked, though she already knew the answer. Most do. Sarah confirmed. Those who might doubt are too afraid of Reeves to speak up. She hesitated, lowering her voice, though no one was nearby. There's worse. Sheriff's drawn up commitment papers. Territorial asylum in Carson City. Cold dread settled in Martha's stomach. Once I'm declared insane, anything I say about Amos or the deed becomes worthless. Exactly. And with you gone, Amos becomes your legal guardian with full authority over your property. Sarah's eyes hardened. The commitment hearing is scheduled 2 days from now, right after Founder's Day. They're moving fast. Martha's gnarled hands twisted in her lap. I need to get back to town. Prove I'm in my right mind. Walking into Sheriff Blackwood's jurisdiction is walking into a trap. Sarah warned. Besides, your word alone won't be enough against Amos, the sheriff, and Reeves combined. Then I need proof. Martha said, determination replacing despair. The original deed Thomas hid, I need to remember where it is. Sarah's eyebrows rose. You mean you don't know? I thought I did. Martha admitted. I kept it in my sewing box for years. But then it vanished. I assumed Amos had found it. If he had, he wouldn't still need you to sign anything, Sarah pointed out. Thomas must have hidden it elsewhere. Martha closed her eyes, searching decades-old memories. Thomas had been so insistent about protecting the springs. He'd made her memorize specific provisions in the deed, how the eastern boundary followed the sacred waters, how Pawnee access was guaranteed in perpetuity. But had he mentioned hiding it somewhere special? The waters, she murmured suddenly. Thomas said. Something about the waters themselves, protecting the deed. Her eyes flew open. The cave behind the western falls. Thomas showed me once a small cave where the Pawnee left offerings to the spring spirits. Sarah's expression sharpened with interest. You think the deed is there? It's worth looking. Martha replied. Thomas would have chosen somewhere with significance, somewhere connected to the promise he made. I'll take you there. Sarah decided, helping Martha to her feet. But we should tell Willow's song first. The western falls are dangerously close to Reeves's men's patrol routes. When they returned to the main camp, however, they found it in controlled chaos. Stone Bear, a massive Pawnee elder, whose face seemed carved from the mountains themselves, was organizing warriors into scouting parties. What's happened? Sarah demanded, switching to the Pawnee language. Little Hawk returned from town. Stone Bear replied grimly. He was spying on Reeves. They planned to commit Martha Caldwell to the asylum and seize her lands. His dark eyes shifted to Martha. They also spoke of accidents, for those who interfere. Willow's song emerged from a nearby tent, his normally calm expression tense. We must accelerate our plans, he said, addressing both women. The Founder's Day celebration is our last chance to expose Reeves publicly before Martha is taken. We need the original deed, Martha explained quickly. I believe Thomas hid it in the cave behind the western falls. Willow's song and Stone Bear exchanged significant looks. The spirit cave, the healer said. a sacred place. If your husband chose it as guardian for his promise, the waters have indeed been working through you both. Can you take me there? Martha asked. Today, Willow Song nodded slowly. It is dangerous, Reeves's men patrol nearby. But with proper precautions, he turned to Stone Bear. Select 2 warriors to accompany us. We leave within the hour. As preparations were made, Singing Reed approached Martha with a small stone vessel containing dark red paste. For protection, she explained, drawing a complex symbol on Martha's forehead. So the water spirits will know you come with pure heart. Martha submitted to the ritual, oddly comforted by the cool touch of the paste against her skin. Will it help us find the deed? Singing Reed's ancient face creased in a smile that held secrets older than the white presence in these lands. The waters already know where lost things lie, she replied cryptically. The question is whether you are ready to receive what they will show you. The journey to the Western Falls took nearly 2 hours, hampered by Martha's limited mobility and the need for extreme caution. They traveled through hidden gulches and narrow game trails, using the landscape to shield their movements from potential observers. When they finally reached the waterfall, Martha gasped in recognition. Though smaller than in her memory, the cascade of crystal-clear water tumbling over red stone remained hauntingly beautiful. Mist rose where water met pool, creating dancing rainbows in the afternoon light. The cave entrance is behind the falls, she told Willow Song. Thomas showed me, but I can't manage that path anymore. She gestured helplessly at her crippled legs. The healer studied the rock face thoughtfully. I will go. Tell me what to look for. Martha described the small cave as Thomas had shown her, a sacred space where generations of Pawnee had left offerings to the water spirits. He would have hidden it well, she concluded. Maybe in a crevice or under a stone. Willow Song nodded, removing his moccasins before approaching the falls. With practiced grace, he slipped behind the curtain of water, disappearing from view. The 2 warriors positioned themselves as lookouts, while Sarah stayed with Martha among the concealing boulders. If the deed isn't there, Sarah began hesitantly. It has to be, Martha interrupted. It's our only chance. Long minutes passed. The sun inched toward the western mountains, painting the landscape in deepening gold. Just as Martha's anxiety threatened to overwhelm her patience, Willow Song emerged from behind the fall's water, streaming from his clothes and hair. His expression told her everything before he spoke. The cave was empty, he reported. No deed. No sign it was ever there. Martha's hope collapsed like a house of cards. He must have moved it, she whispered. Or maybe my memory is failing. Maybe Amos is right about... No. Willow Song cut her off firmly. Your mind is sound. There was something else in the cave, however. This. He held out his palm, revealing a tarnished brass button engraved with an Eagle Standard issue for territorial deputies like Thomas. Thomas's spare button. Martha breathed, taking it with trembling fingers. He always carried one. It was placed deliberately. Willow Song explained, on a small stone shelf near the back wall. Recently, I think. The dust around it was disturbed. Martha stared at the button, memories surfacing like bubbles in spring water. He used to hide notes for me, she said slowly. When he'd be gone on patrol, he'd leave a button somewhere in the house, and I'd know to look for a message. Her clouded eyes widened with sudden clarity. It's a sign. He left this for me to find. But where's the message? Sarah asked. Before Martha could respond, one of the warrior lookouts gave a sharp, low whistle, danger approaching. They froze, listening. The distant sound of hoofbeats carried through the canyon. Leaders to the warrior reported quietly in Pawnee. 4, maybe 5, coming this way. Reeves's men. Sarah translated for Martha. They patrol this boundary every few days, looking for Pawnee incursions. We must move, Willow Song decided. Quickly and quietly, back to the eastern path. They retreated into the shadowed gulch, Martha fighting frustration as her crippled legs slowed their progress. The riders' voices grew clearer, rough-edged men exchanging crude jokes, unaware of those hiding nearby. Then disaster struck. Martha's walking stick caught in a rock crevice, snapping with a crack that echoed off the canyon walls. The voices ahead went silent. "Someone there," called a suspicious voice. "Show yourself. Run." Martha whispered to the others. "I'll delay them." Willow Song's expression hardened. "We do not abandon our own." 4 armed men against 2 warriors and a healer. Martha countered. "They'll kill you all. Me they'll just take back to Amos. I'll have until the commitment hearing to find another way." The hoofbeats resumed closer now. Sarah grabbed Martha's arm. "There's no time to argue. Uncle, we have to go now. We can't help her if we're dead." After an agonizing moment of indecision, Willow Song nodded grimly. 2 days, he told Martha. "We will come for you before they take you to Carson City." He pressed something into her palm, a small leather pouch on a cord. "Keep this hidden. The medicine inside will protect your spirit, if not your body." Then they were gone, melting into the landscape with preternatural skill. Martha straightened her shoulders, tucked the medicine pouch and brass button into her bodice, and stepped forward to meet her captors. "Well, what have we here?" sneered the lead rider, Victor Reese, his wounded shoulder bound in dirty bandages. "The crazy old lady out for a stroll." His hand moved to his gun. "Where's your savage friend?" Martha lifted her chin. "Alone," she said clearly. "I escaped from him. Been trying to find my way back to town." Victor's scarred face twisted in disbelief. "Escaped? You expect me to believe that—" "Believe what you want," Martha replied. "But Amos will pay good money to get me back." The mention of payment shifted something in Victor's expression. "Mount up," he ordered one of his men. "Behind Reynolds. We're taking her back." As rough hands lifted her onto a horse, Martha allowed herself one backward glance toward the falls. The button hadn't been the message, it had been the marker pointing to the message. But where had Thomas hidden his final communication, and would she live long enough to find it? Martha's return to Salvation Creek caused exactly the sensation Amos had hoped for. As Victor's party rode down Main Street, townspeople stopped to stare and whisper behind raised hands. Martha, disheveled and marked with Singing Reed's red symbols, made a convincing picture of a woman who had indeed been bewitched by savage rituals. Sheriff Blackwood met them outside his office, his performance of official concern belied by the satisfaction in his piggy eyes. "Mrs. Caldwell, thank the Lord you're safe. We've been searching everywhere. I want to see my son." Martha stated flatly, refusing his outstretched hand as she was helped from the horse. Of course, of course." The sheriff's false solicitude made her skin crawl. "Amos has been beside himself with worry. He's waiting at Dr. Williams' office, thought you might need medical attention after your ordeal." Martha understood the game immediately. Dr. Williams, a drunk with a medical degree of questionable provenance, would provide whatever professional opinion Amos and Reeves required for the commitment hearing. Every move was being choreographed to ensure she had no credible voice to oppose the land transfer. She maintained dignified silence as Blackwood escorted her down the boardwalk, past gawking townspeople. She noted Jonas Fellman watching from his store entrance, his expression torn between relief at her return and concern for her fate. She gave him the slightest nod, a signal that she was clear-headed and aware. At the doctor's shabby office, Amos waited with well-rehearsed anxiety. "Mother," he exclaimed, rushing forward. "Thank God you're alive. I've been out of my mind with worry." "Have you now?" Martha replied coldly. If Amos was thrown by her lack of confusion, He recovered quickly. "Doctor, she needs immediate attention. Look at those pagan markings. Who knows what they've done to her mind?" Dr. Williams, a cadaverous man with perpetually bloodshot eyes, nodded importantly. "Indeed, indeed. Mrs. Caldwell, please sit. You've had quite a shock." "The only shock," Martha said clearly, "is discovering how far my son will go for Sebastian Reeves's money." Amos's face transformed concern, giving way to calculated pity, as he turned to the doctor. "You see, these delusions have been growing worse. She believes I'm conspiring against her, that I—" His voice broke with manufactured emotion. "That I would harm my own mother. Common paranoid ideation." Williams agreed, peering into Martha's eyes with alcohol-soured breath, often accompanied by confabulation and false memories. Martha met his bleary gaze unflinchingly. "My memories are intact, Doctor, including the time Thomas treated you for delirium tremens when no other doctor would touch you." Williams flinched almost imperceptibly before regaining his professional mask. "Agitation and aggression," he noted, writing in a small notebook. "Consistent with advanced mental deterioration." The charade continued for nearly an hour, every statement Martha made twisted into evidence of her supposed instability. When she mentioned Willow's song saving her from Victor Reese's violence, it became hallucinations of rescue by supernatural beings. When she referenced the sacred spring's importance to the Pawnee, it was documented as indigenous superstitions intruding into rational thought. By the time Williams pronounced his preliminary diagnosis, severe mental degeneration requiring immediate institutional intervention, Martha understood the trap was complete. The commitment hearing was mere formality, its outcome predetermined. "She'll need to be kept secure until the judge arrives," Williams told Amos and Blackwood. "For her own safety, of course. The cell at the sheriff's office has a good lock," Blackwood suggested with poorly concealed satisfaction. "A cell," Amos protested with false indignation. "My mother isn't a criminal. Surely she can stay at our home under my supervision." "Too risky," the doctor countered. "In her condition, she might harm herself or others. The sheriff's office is the only suitable location until the hearing." Martha remained silent, conserving her strength for battles that could still be won. As Blackwood led her back toward his office, she caught sight of Augustus Merriweather, the county clerk, watching from the doorway of the records office. Their eyes met briefly, long enough for Martha to register something unexpected in his expression: guilt. The sheriff's cell was small, but clean evidence that it saw little regular use in a town where Blackwood's justice was typically dispensed through bribes and threats rather than legitimate arrests. A narrow cot chamber pot and small barred window comprised the entirety of its amenities. "You'll be comfortable enough here," Blackwood told her with mock solicitude as he turned the key. "Consider it protective custody." After he departed, Martha carefully examined her prison. The window was too small for escape, the lock too solid for her arthritic hands to manipulate. But solitude offered one advantage: privacy to examine Thomas's button without prying eyes. She withdrew it from her bodice, along with the medicine pouch Willow's song had given her. The button was standard issue, unremarkable, save for the small scratch across the eagle's wing, Thomas's identifying mark, to distinguish his spare from others. She turned it over in her palm, seeking any clue to its significance. Nothing. The medicine pouch offered no immediate help, either just a small leather sack containing what appeared to be dried herbs and tiny crystals of some mineral. Martha slipped both items back into hiding as footsteps approached. To her surprise, the visitor was not Blackwood or Amos, but Augustus Merriweather. The county clerk entered nervously, clutching a small Bible. "Mrs. Caldwell," he began awkwardly, "I've come to... That is, the sheriff suggested you might want spiritual comfort." Martha's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Did he now?" Merriweather glanced over his shoulder and then lowered his voice. "I need to speak with you. Privately." Will you accept a prayer?" Understanding dawned. Martha nodded, moving to kneel beside the cot. Meriwether knelt opposite her, opening the Bible and beginning to recite the Lord's Prayer in a voice pitched to carry to any eavesdroppers. As he prayed, he slipped a folded note from between the Bible's pages into Martha's hand. "Amen," he concluded after several minutes of similar spiritual platitudes. In a normal voice, he added, "I'll return tomorrow, Mrs. Caldwell." Faith can be a great comfort in troubled times. After he departed, Martha waited until the outer office fell silent before unfolding his note. "Thomas left the original deed with me 20 years ago. I've kept it safe. Reeves suspects but cannot prove it exists. Fellman and I will testify at hearing. Widow Parker, too. Hold fast. You are not alone." Hope, that most fragile of emotions, fluttered in Martha's chest. They had allies, small in number perhaps, but significant in courage. If Meriwether had the original deed, Reeves's plans might yet be thwarted. She tucked the note into the medicine pouch, then settled on the cot to conserve her strength. Tomorrow would bring the Founders' Day celebration, and with it their last chance to expose Reeves before the commitment hearing sealed her fate. As darkness fell over Salvation Creek, Martha closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to remember to trace the geography of her life, with Thomas seeking any overlooked clue about the button's significance. Somewhere in the labyrinth of memory lay the key to understanding his final message. Dawn found Martha already awake, her mind clear, despite her body's protests, at a night spent on the hard cot. Through her cell window, she could see Salvation Creek stirring to life, merchants decorating storefronts with bunting children running excitedly through streets normally dominated by dusty cowboys and weary travelers. Founders' Day, the celebration that commemorated Salvation Creek's establishment 23 years earlier, a history Martha had witnessed firsthand as a young bride. Thomas had been so proud of his deputy's badge, so determined that this raw frontier outpost would grow into a community of justice and opportunity. What would he think of it now? Of his son, of the man who had twisted his dream of progress into a weapon against the vulnerable. Her bitter musings were interrupted by the arrival of breakfast, a surprisingly generous meal carried by Deputy Wilson, the youngest and least corrupted of Blackwood's men. "Morning, Mrs. Caldwell." He greeted her awkwardly. "Sheriff said to make sure you ate proper today. Big celebration and all." Martha accepted the tray with dignified thanks. As Wilson turned to leave, she called after him. "Will I be allowed to attend the celebration, I mean?" The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "Sheriff said you're to have a front row seat. Said it's important for folks to see you're being treated right before tomorrow's hearing. A public display, then Amos and Blackwood parading their concern for her welfare, while simultaneously demonstrating her supposed instability." Martha nodded, as if this explained everything. "Looking forward to it?" she said with deliberate ambiguity. Hours later, Sheriff Blackwood himself came to escort her from the cell. Martha had used the intervening time to make herself as presentable as possible, smoothing her gray hair, straightening her simple dress, washing away the last traces of Singing Reed's protective symbols. If she was to be exhibited like a carnival curiosity, she would at least maintain her dignity. "A big crowd today," Blackwood commented as they walked toward the town square, his meaty hand gripping her arm too tightly. Whole territories turned out to hear Sebastian Reeves announce his new development plans, including the Pawnee land he means to steal. Martha inquired pleasantly. Blackwood's grip tightened painfully. "Mind your tongue, old woman. One wrong word today, and I'll personally see you strapped to the Carson City asylum bed by nightfall, hearing or no hearing." The town square had been transformed by the celebration preparations. A wooden platform draped in patriotic bunting dominated the center, already occupied by town dignitaries, Mayor Culpepper corpulent and self-satisfied, Reverend Stillwell thin and dour in his clerical collar, and various merchants whose prosperity depended on Sebastian Reeves's continued patronage. Amos stood among them, playing his role of concerned son to perfection. He'd bathed and shaved for the occasion, his usual dishevelment replaced by an uncharacteristic neatness that made him almost unrecognizable. Upon seeing Martha, he descended from the platform with a performance worthy of a traveling theater troupe. "Mother." He greeted her with manufactured warmth, taking her arm from Blackwood. "I've saved you the best seat, right up front where you can hear everything." Martha allowed herself to be led to a chair positioned conspicuously near the platform. The gathered townsfolk parted to let them through, their whispers following like snakes through grass. Poor Amos, such a burden. Heard she was living with Indians. Always seemed odd after Thomas died. Scanning the crowd, Martha noted familiar faces. Jonas Fellman standing tensely near his store entrance. Widow Parker clutching her prayer book with white-knuckled intensity. Augustus Merriweather hovering at the edge of the gathering, his eyes communicating silent support, small islands of resistance in a sea of complicity. She also spotted unfamiliar figures scattered throughout, affluent men in Eastern suits, examining the proceedings with calculating interest. Reeves's investors, she realized. Here to assess their potential returns on Salvation Creek's development. As noon approached, Mayor Culpepper rose ponderously, raising his hands for silence. The crowd gradually quieted as he cleared his throat importantly. "Friends, neighbors, distinguished visitors." He began, his voice pitched to carry. "Welcome to Salvation Creek's 23rd Annual Founders Day celebration today. We honor those visionary souls who carved civilization from wilderness, bringing light to darkness, order to chaos." Polite applause followed this bombastic introduction. Martha noted how carefully the mayor avoided mentioning that this chaos had been Pawnee territory for countless generations before white settlement. Thomas had always insisted on acknowledging that fact in his own Founders Day speeches, a courtesy that had earned him both respect from the Pawnee and suspicion from those who viewed them as obstacles rather than neighbors. "It is my great privilege," the mayor continued, "to introduce our most distinguished citizen and benefactor, a man whose generous contributions have made today's celebration possible. Mr. Sebastian Reeves." Enthusiastic applause greeted Reeves as he approached the podium. Immaculate in an expensive Eastern suit, silver hair catching the midday sun, he projected an aura of patrician authority that commanded attention. His right hand rested casually in his jacket pocket, a gesture that might have appeared statesmanlike if Martha hadn't noticed the slight bulge of a concealed derringer. "My friends," Reeves began, his cultured voice carrying effortlessly. 23 years ago, brave men and women planted the seeds of civilization in this harsh wilderness. They faced hostile elements, scarce resources, and yes. His gaze swept meaningfully across the crowd. Savage resistance from those who failed to understand progress. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Martha scanned the gathering for any sign of Willow Song or the Pawnee, but saw only white faces. "Today we stand as testament to their vision." Reeves continued. "Salvation Creek is no longer a struggling outpost, but a thriving community poised for even greater growth." His smile widened, revealing teeth too perfect to be natural. "And I am proud to announce that my modest contributions to that growth will soon include a major expansion of cattle operations to the north and east, bringing unprecedented prosperity to our region." More applause, particularly from the visiting investors. Martha felt Amos's hand tighten on her shoulder, a warning to maintain her silence. "This expansion," Reeves went on, "represents not merely economic opportunity, but the triumph of civilization's order over nature's chaos. By harnessing the untapped water resources of the Eastern Territories, we will transform barren desert into productive ranch land, capable of supporting thousands of head of cattle." "You mean by stealing the sacred springs?" came a clear voice from the crowd's edge. A collective gasp rose as heads turned to identify the speaker. Willow's song stood at the periphery of the gathering, commanding attention, not through volume, but through the sheer force of his presence. He wore traditional Pawnee garments, adorned with sacred symbols, his silver-streaked hair bound with a single eagle feather. Sheriff Blackwood's hand moved to his pistol. "That's far enough, Indian," he called. "This celebration is for citizens only. The waters have no citizenship." Willow's song replied evenly, making no move to retreat. "They belong to neither white nor Pawnee. They are their own sovereignty." Reeves's mask of benevolence slipped momentarily, revealing cold calculation beneath. He recovered quickly, addressing the crowd rather than Willow's song directly. "As you can see, friends, the challenges faced by our founders continue today. Those who resist progress cloak their selfishness in mysticism and superstition. Is legal documentation also superstition, Mr. Reeves?" The new voice belonged to Augustus Merriweather, who stepped forward clutching a leather document case. "Because I have here the original deed to the Caldwell property, a deed with specific provisions protecting Pawnee access to the springs in perpetuity." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. On the platform, Sheriff Blackwood's face darkened with rage, while Amos's fingers dug painfully into Martha's shoulder. "Augustus," the sheriff growled, "you're overstepping your authority as county clerk." "I'm reclaiming it," Merriweather countered after years of cowardice. He held the document case aloft. "Thomas Caldwell entrusted this to me 20 years ago. It contains legal covenant preventing development of the sacred springs, a covenant that remains binding regardless of who owns the surrounding property." Reeves's composed facade didn't waver, though something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Fascinating," he remarked, voice dripping with false solicitude. "However, Mrs. Caldwell has already transferred ownership to her son, who has in turn sold the property to me. The transaction is complete and legally recorded. A transaction based on fraud," Martha declared, rising from her chair, despite Amos's restraining hand. "I never signed any transfer. My son forged my signature while Sheriff Blackwood provided false witness." The crowd's murmuring intensified. Martha felt the moment balanced on a knife's edge, revelation poised against disbelief, truth against power. Reeves sighed theatrically. "Mrs. Caldwell's mental deterioration is a tragedy her family has struggled with for years," he announced to the gathering. "Tomorrow's competency hearing will ensure she receives the professional care she desperately needs." He gestured to Dr. Williams, who nodded sagely from the platform. "Until then, these sad delusions deserve our compassion, not our credence." "They're not delusions," came yet another voice, Widow Parker stepping forward with uncharacteristic boldness. "I've witnessed Amos Caldwell's cruelty to his mother firsthand. Heard her screams in the night, seen the bruises he left. Jonas Fellman joined her. Found him beating her in the alley behind my store just last week. Had to threaten him with my shotgun to make him stop." Other voices joined the chorus, a seamstress who'd seen Martha begging while Amos gambled away her earnings. A bartender who'd overheard Amos boasting about managing the old woman through starvation and fear. A child who'd witnessed him dragging her through the streets by her hair. Years of silent complicity were cracking, spilling forth long-suppressed truths. The mood of the crowd shifted perceptibly as the ugly reality beneath Salvation Creek's respectable veneer came into focus. Amos, sensing the turning tide, abandoned subtlety for desperate action. He grabbed Martha, roughly pulling her against him as he withdrew a knife from his boot. "Enough!" he shouted, pressing the blade to his mother's throat. "One more word and I'll end her misery right here." The crowd recoiled in horror. Sheriff Blackwood, seeing his carefully constructed plan collapsing, drew his pistol and backed toward Reeves. "Everyone stay calm," he ordered, though his own voice shook with panic. "This woman is clearly causing a dangerous disturbance. Deputy Wilson, clear the square." But Deputy Wilson made no move to obey. Instead, he unhooked his badge and tossed it into the dust. "Not anymore, Sheriff. I didn't sign on to threaten old women and steal land." Martha felt the cold steel against her throat, felt Amos's arms trembling with barely contained rage. Yet strangely, fear had abandoned her. In its place was a crystalline clarity, the same clarity Thomas had shown facing down armed outlaws with nothing but his badge and conviction. "Your father would be ashamed," she said quietly for Amos's ears alone. "Not of what you've done to me, that's between us, but of what you've become, a man who would poison sacred waters for money." Something flickered in Amos's eyes, a ghost of the boy she'd raised drowning in the man he'd become. "Shut up," he hissed, but the knife hand wavered. "I know about the mercury, Amos." She continued, voice steady despite the blade at her throat. "I know you've been poisoning the springs for months on Reeves's orders, killing the waters to devalue the land for anyone but him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Poisoning water sources was among the frontier's most reviled crimes, a transgression against the unwritten code that governed survival in harsh lands. "That's a damned lie." Reeves shouted, his composure finally cracking. "Caldwell, silence her!" But Martha had found her voice at last, the voice that had been stolen by years of abuse and isolation. "Thomas knew what men like you would do," she continued, addressing Reeves directly now. "That's why he left clues only I would understand. The button in the spirit cave wasn't the message, it was the key to the message." Understanding dawned like sunrise across her mind. "The eagle's wing," she breathed. The scratched wing on the button. Thomas was pointing to Eagle's Wing Canyon, the northern boundary marker of our property. He hid something there. Willow Song stepped forward, pulling something from his medicine pouch, a folded paper yellowed with age. "We found this at dawn," he announced. "Buried beneath a cairn marked with a deputy's star at Eagle's Wing Canyon." Merriweather moved to examine the document, his experienced eyes widening. "It's a federal territorial order," he announced, voice ringing with surprise. "Signed by the governor himself. It designates the sacred springs as protected waters, federal protected waters not subject to private ownership or development." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Federal protection superseded all local claims, all private sales, all county records. It was the one thing even Sebastian Reeves's money and influence couldn't overcome. "Impossible." Reeves sputtered, his aristocratic facade crumbling completely. "There's no record of such an order in the territorial archives." "Because you destroyed it," Martha realized aloud. "Just like you've been destroying everything that stands between you and what you want." But Thomas outsmarted you. He kept a certified copy hidden where only someone who truly knew these lands would find it. The knife at her throat suddenly clattered to the ground as Amos released her, staggering backward. His face had drained of color, eyes fixed on something beyond the crowd's edge. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." Martha turned to follow his gaze. At the far side of the square, partially obscured by shadow, stood a figure that seemed composed of water and light and the translucent outline of a man wearing a deputy's badge that caught the sun like polished silver. Only Martha and Amos appeared to see it. The apparition raised its hand in Martha's direction, a gesture of acknowledgement of benediction before dissolving into the midday heat. "Thomas," Martha whispered, understanding flowing through her like the sacred springs themselves. The waters had been working through her all along, just as Singing Reed had said, and guiding her toward this moment of truth. The crowd's attention remained fixed on the more tangible drama unfolding before them. Sebastian Reeves, watching his carefully constructed empire crumbling, made a desperate calculation. With unexpected speed for a man his age, he drew the concealed derringer from his pocket and aimed it directly at Martha. "If I can't have the springs," he snarled, "no one will." 3 shots exploded in rapid succession, but not from Reeves's derringer. Willow Song's rifle cracked first, the bullet striking Reeves's hand with surgical precision. The derringer discharged harmlessly into the ground as he dropped it, howling in pain. The second shot came from behind Martha. Sheriff Blackwood firing wildly toward Willow Song, but missing by yards. The third shot emanated from Deputy Wilson's revolver, catching Blackwood squarely in the shoulder and spinning him to the ground. Chaos erupted. Women screamed, children cried, men shouted contradictory instructions. The visiting investors scattered like quail. Their interest in Salvation Creek's development prospects suddenly evaporated. Amos, seeing his patrons disabled and his plans in ruins, made a desperate break for the edge of the square. He might have escaped in the confusion had a figure not stepped into his path: Sarah Little Creek, accompanied by Stone Bear and 3 other Pawnee warriors. "Going somewhere?" she asked pleasantly, before delivering a precise strike to his solar plexus that left him gasping in the dust. Within minutes, the violence had subsided into uneasy order. Deputy Wilson, with the support of several townsmen, including Jonas Fellman, had secured both Blackwood and Reeves. Amos sat dejected in the dirt, guarded by Stone Bear's unforgiving gaze. Martha found herself at the center of a protective circle. Willow Song to her right, Augustus Merriweather to her left, and a growing number of townspeople gathering around them. People who had looked away for years were suddenly finding their voices, their courage, their humanity. "The federal order changes everything," Merriweather announced to the assembly. "The springs are protected by territorial law. No one, not Reeves, not anyone, can develop that land." "What about the poisoning?" someone called. "He said they've been putting mercury in the water." Willow Song nodded grimly. "The waters have been sickening. Now we know why." He turned to Martha. "The springs can be healed, but it will take time and cooperation between our peoples." Martha straightened her bent shoulders, finding strength she'd thought long extinguished. "Then we'll work together," she declared, as Thomas intended all along. The aftermath of what came to be known as the Founders' Day revelation transformed Salvation Creek in ways both immediate and lasting. Sheriff Blackwood and Sebastian Reeves were transported to the territorial capital to face multiple charges: corruption, land fraud, attempted murder, and environmental destruction. Amos Caldwell joined them, his pretensions of filial concern shattered by his public violence against his mother. For Martha, the days following brought a strange mixture of vindication and rebirth. The townspeople, shamed by their years of willful blindness, attempted to make amends. Offers of help, expressions of remorse, invitations to social gatherings long denied her. She accepted these with grace, but maintained a certain distance, understanding that trust once broken required time to reconstruct. 1 week after the confrontation, as summer heat baked the Nevada landscape into shades of gold and red, Martha made a decision that would further reshape Salvation Creek's future. Using her reinstated authority as the legitimate owner of the Caldwell property, she established an unprecedented arrangement, a jointly managed settlement at the boundary between her land and Pawnee territory, dedicated to protecting and healing the sacred springs. The waters belonged to neither White nor Pawnee alone, she declared to representatives of both communities. They are a gift from the earth itself. We will protect them together or lose them together. Not everyone approved. Some townsfolk refused to have any dealings with the Indian lovers at the springs. Some Pawnee elders mistrusted any arrangement with white settlers, even well-intentioned ones. But enough people from both sides recognized the wisdom in Martha's vision to give it a chance at survival. Willow Song established a permanent healing practice on the shared land, combining his traditional knowledge with medical texts that Jonas Fellman ordered from Denver. White settlers, initially hesitant, gradually began seeking his help when conventional doctors failed them, creating small bridges of understanding between communities long divided. Sarah Little Creek emerged as a natural leader in this new settlement, her mixed heritage allowing her to move easily between different worlds. She established a small school teaching both Pawnee and white children the knowledge they would need to navigate an ever-changing frontier. Martha herself took up residence in a small but comfortable cabin, built specifically to accommodate her disabilities. For the first time in years, she returned to the art that had once defined her, not just sewing and embroidery, but teaching these skills to young women from both communities, creating a shared tradition that honored both cultures' aesthetics. The sacred springs themselves became the heart of this experiment in coexistence. Carefully monitored by Pawnee healers, the waters slowly purged themselves of Reeves's poisons, regaining their legendary clarity. As they healed, so did the land around them, and the people who depended on that land. On a crisp autumn evening, as Martha sat outside her cabin watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Willow Song joined her, offering a cup of fragrant tea. "The waters speak of you," he said, settling beside her. "They say you have become a bridge between worlds, just as Thomas hoped." Martha smiled, accepting the tea with gnarled hands that had regained purpose, if not mobility. The waters speak of many things, it seems, to those who listen. Willow Song studied her with quiet appreciation. "Few have endured what you have without surrendering to bitterness. Your spirit bent but never broke." "The waters taught me that," Martha replied. "Moving always forward, finding paths around obstacles, rather than fighting them directly." She sipped the tea, savoring its complex flavor. "I understand now why Thomas loved this place so fiercely. Not just for its beauty, but for what it represents: life persisting against all odds." The trading post brought mail. Willow Song said after a comfortable silence. "A letter for you." Martha accepted the envelope with surprise. "Who would write to me? Everyone who matters is here." The letter bore an unfamiliar handwriting and a postmark from Sacramento. With fingers stiffened by arthritis, but strengthened by purpose, Martha carefully broke the seal and unfolded the single page. "Dear Aunt Martha." She read aloud, her voice catching with emotion. "You may not remember me, as we met only once when I was very young. I am Elizabeth, daughter of your husband's brother, William." Martha paused too, moved to continue. Willow Song took the letter, gently reading the remaining paragraphs. "Father passed last winter, and among his effects, I found letters speaking of you with great affection and concern. Only recently did I learn of the events in Salvation Creek, of your courage in standing against terrible odds to protect both your land and the sacred waters. If my presence would not be an imposition, I should very much like to visit you. I have some medical training and wonder if my skills might be of service to your unique community." Uncle Thomas wrote often of his dream for cooperation between peoples. "I would be honored to help continue that legacy. With deepest respect and hope, your niece Elizabeth Caldwell Manning." Within the envelope was a smaller item, a faded daguerreotype showing a young woman with Thomas's determined eyes and gentle smile. Martha sat in silence, watching the sunset's final blaze across the western sky. Tears glimmered in her eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. "Family," Willow Song said quietly. "Coming to you after all these years?" Martha nodded, a smile touching her lined face. "When I was at my lowest, I thought I had lost everything. My dignity, my purpose, my connection to others. Now I find I have more family than I ever dreamed possible." She gestured toward the settlement beyond her cabin, where cooking fires were being lit for evening meals. Some bound by blood, most bound by something stronger. "Nograris darkum." The strongest bonds are not born of blood or law. Willow Song agreed, but of shared vision, of standing together when the storm comes. As darkness fell across the Nevada desert, lights bloomed in windows throughout the settlement, Pawnee lodges and white cabins alike. Children's laughter carried on the evening breeze, mingling with ancient songs and newer harmonies. At the sacred springs, water continued its eternal journey from earth to sky and back again indifferent to human claims of ownership, generous in its life-giving power to all who approached with respect. And Martha Caldwell, once broken by cruelty, now strengthened by compassion, watched over it all with clear eyes and a healing heart no longer defined by what had been done to her, but by what she had overcome. In the shadow of her deepest pain, she had discovered not just survival, but transformation and the triumph of dignity over degradation, of community, over isolation, of hope over despair. The cruel sun's shadow had finally lifted, revealing the light that had always waited beyond it, a light strong enough to illuminate not just one reclaimed life, but the path toward a shared future where old enemies might yet become new allies in the continuing story of the American frontier. In her pocket, Martha carried two treasures, Thomas's brass button and a small carved wooden bird that Willow's song had made for her. One represented her past, its pain, and its purpose. The other symbolized her unexpected future free, like the bird to soar beyond the limitations others had imposed upon her. "The waters tell me," Willow's song said as the first stars appeared overhead, "that your niece brings something more than medical knowledge. Something the springs themselves have been waiting for." "What's that?" Martha asked. The healer's eyes reflected starlight as he smiled. "New beginnings." Martha followed his gaze to the heavens, where countless stars blazed against the velvet darkness, the same stars that had witnessed her deepest suffering, and now bore witness to her unexpected rebirth. In their ancient light, she found a truth as old as the springs themselves, that even the deepest wounds could heal given time and the courage to let them. "New beginnings," she echoed softly. "I think I'm ready for those."